Hey guys, Bart here. Welcome to TST Garage. As you can see, to the left of me, I have a beautiful brand spanking new Kawasaki Ninja 400. We're slowly starting to work on this bike, and today I will be showing you how to install the newly released TST industry fork slider on this bike. We have released many of these systems for different bikes. On this particular bike, it was a little bit tricky to execute in a way that it won't inhibit pit performance in case you are racing this bike. In a race setting, you want to be able to take your wheel off and put it back on very fast. That way you don't miss any sessions or races or anything like that. And you don't want this thing to be a pain in the butt. So we took our time, and finally we were able to source the appropriate components to hit all of the criteria that we want these sliders to hit. And now we're releasing these for you guys to enjoy. And I will show you how to perform the installation on this bike. Now let me quickly run through the components of this part. We have two slider pucks, which are identical. They are not side specific. We have two bosses made out of 6061 aluminum that are not identical. On this particular bike, the axle side and the nut side have different size holes. So we have indicated the axle head side with a groove on one of these bosses. I will repeat that in our procedure. We're also replacing the OEM nut along with the locking mechanism for that nut, which is a cotter pin, with a U-nut. Now this nut has a locking mechanism built into it. The locking mechanism is two tangs. These are very common on bigger bikes, also on the R3. Actually, most of the bikes that I've raced and I've worked on have U-nuts with the U-nut locking mechanism. The cotter pin that comes on these bikes is a very, very secure method of locking the nut, but I think it's just a little archaic, and other manufacturers have progressed from that mechanism, and I think this will just be a really nice upgrade to make the removal of the wheel speedy in the race environment. All right, pretty much done yapping here. I'm excited to show you how easy this is to get on the bike. Let's get started. All right, the first step of our installation today will be to withdraw the locking mechanism here, which is a cotter pin. The idea is to unfold the leaves, make the leaves coaxial with the inside of the cotter pin, and then withdraw it. As you use pliers. Squeeze it all together, and then either take it out from this side or knock it out from the inside with pliers or another tool. And now this nut is free. So I will get this bad boy up on a stand, and I will grab a 24 millimeter socket, and off we go. Now, the cotter pin, the castle nut, and this washer is not reused. So what's retained here on the bike after the removal of the nut and washer is all that we're going to be using. Now let's talk about what we're going to do about keeping the wheel in while we remove the axle. Obviously we could actually drop the wheel, no big deal, but for this particular installation, I'm going to make it as easy as possible. We could possibly use a tire wedge that would snap in and support our wheel in place. Not everybody has this, so I'm going to give two alternative scenarios. I have wheel blocks that I use sometimes on certain bikes. Just knock it in like this from the back. And now I can get the axle out, the wheel will stay put, and that's a pretty good way of doing that. I also have a rod that I use sometimes, and I just knock out the axle with the rod itself, and the rod replaces the axle, and that's my preferred method actually. Just like that. Now in the intro, I did talk about two bosses being slightly different. We have indicated the axle head side with the groove that's cut into the boss. We are going to place the axle through just like that and go in the reverse order. And there it is. And then the plain looking boss goes on the nut side. Now I think you've noticed that we ditched the washer. The inside of this boss actually acts like the washer. So I'm gonna get that on here. Grab our U-nut that comes with the kit. Thread it on by hand first. This is very, very important. All right, once you get thread engagement, you grab your 24mm socket and get that till it's tight. I have a 17mm socket on this side, and that's what I'm going to use to get this seated to the bottom. And once this starts getting tight, we need to go to bigger tools. This axle nut requires 72 foot-pounds of torque. There is no replacement for the appropriate torque setting. So I highly recommend, I urge you guys that you always torque this to the appropriate value. If you do not, this thing may loosen on you and cause an unsafe situation. So 72 foot-pounds is 98 Newton meters for you guys across the pond. Now, we get our slider pucks threaded in by hand until they bottom out. And then we're going to grab a 15mm socket and we're going to tighten these down. When I'm working on a race bike in a race setting, I typically don't torque these things down. Anything delrin, I just get it snugged in, and I know that the threads are actually preloaded, and that will prevent vibrations from removing the part off the bike. If you guys really need a torque spec here, I'm gonna go 120 inch-pounds. That is 10 foot-pounds. That will be plenty. All right, we are done. Thing's ready to roll. Now, these products are available as a set of their own or in combination with our total protection pack, which includes fork slider, frame sliders, bar ends, and swing arm spools. If you like what you see here, or maybe you just like my t-shirt, check out tstindustries.com. We've got you covered. See you later.